this early hour, we have breaking developing news from the nether regions, known to many as hell. We go live to our correspondent, Bob.
Thanks, Lisa. I'm here in the gates of With Hellfire speaking to Beelzebub as he made the shocking announcement that after over 200 years, he will no longer hold his famous gold fiddle contest in Georgia.
That's right, Bob. After much consideration and consulting from our team of lawyers, the administration of the 9 realms of hell do not feel comfortable using Georgia as the backdrop for the fiddle contest in light, and man, I hate that word, but in light of the recent machinations of the Republican Party stealing rights from their constituents.
So I'm assuming that this is something hotly debated here.
Hotly, I like it. That's classic. Yes, I see what you did there. Yes, I mean, we're all about pain and torture here, but that's beyond even what we are willing to do.
So why make this announcement now?
Well, we quickly realized that, like most corporations in the area, it would be very bad for our image to keep our alliance with the GOP and Georgia as a whole. We wish them good luck, but if we really wanted that level of misery, we'd move to Kentucky. Ew, that McConnell gives me the creeps.
Back to you, Lisa.
And now, for a message from our sponsor, Hellfire. Twice as hot as the regular no-name brand fire.
That was brilliant.
Awesome.
Hello, this is Dr. Darrell Ray, and I took a left at the valley. And then I masturbated after that.
Thank you for that. Thank you.
I know we shouldn't have to scream that we're atheists. You know, we don't have non-astrologers and all that. But with the religious people taking over the world, I mean, we can either speak up or be pushed into a corner.
I'm proud to be an atheist, a skeptic, a non-believer, an infidel, a heathen. I call it how I see it. I say it's ignorance and you just call it faith in unsubstantiated claims. That's something to be ashamed. I'm an atheist.
Coming at you from City, BC, this is Left of the Valley 2.0. My name is Kevin, and my girlfriend asked me to stop singing I'm a Believer by the Monkees. At first I thought she was joking, but then I saw her face. Joining me as usual is the team that will tell you that a DNA test is not a good baby shower gift.
But it makes a great Christmas present.
When she says the other day, she could be referring to any time between the last 10 years, Sabrina.
Hey, how's it going? And that's so true, by the way.
And to him, drink responsibly means he didn't spill it. Brent Lee.
I don't spell.
Guys, welcome back. Hope you had a great week.
Look, did you notice we have a new co-host?
We do?
Yeah, Mr. Daddy Longlegs.
What? Oh, there's a spider somewhere?
Uh-huh.
Oh, okay, well, welcome to the new co-host. That was random.
No, it's not random. I notice spiders everywhere. In fact, we might have
Still
to
random
pause so
that
you
you
can
just
get rid of
meant.
it.
From what I understand, as long as you don't eat them, you're good.
Okay. Well, it's a Daddy Longlegs, actually. They don't bother me too much.
Yeah.
Oh, boy. So today we'll be talking to Janice Selbie about CORT, a conference on religious trauma, and we'll be talking about religious trauma. But first, let's do a bit of chit-chat. Did you guys hear, we got some COVID news again, unfortunately. COVID-19, so while the U.S. is actually going down...
Can you believe it?
Due to the not incompetent new administration now, things are actually getting worse here in Canada.
Can you, like, seriously? I'm embarrassed about this.
What? Oh, yes, actually
this is embarrassing.
It's embarrassing. And I hate to say it, but it's getting worse. Where? Well, yeah, of course, it's getting worse in the provinces, or, you know, the Canadian equivalent to states that are run by conservatives. Of course it is.
Surprise, surprise.
Canada is also fighting 3 different variants of COVID, including the deadlier P1 that came out of Brazil.
Because we like to fly in foreign workers. That's my guess. I haven't looked into it too much, but that would be my guess.
One of the reasons that Canada is having a hard time with this is that Canada actually used to have a manufacturing facility where you can actually produce vaccines like that, because this is what happens when they're trying to produce a vaccine. A company like Pfizer, for example, will say, can we borrow your facilities so we could produce on site and cut cost? Canada used to have one of these facilities, but of course, during the 80s and 90s, under a conservative government, they shut it down.
So we don't have enough vaccines. You guys are getting them in the millions, right? You were saying millions
actually,
a day.
Yeah.
Oh God, I wish. No, there's wait lists here.
So now it's gone to the point that the amount of people getting COVID-19 in Canada is mimicking what the state. As the states are going down, Canada is actually climbing in a spike.
We're gonna meet you guys in the middle somewhere.
Yeah, exactly. So now it's even gone to the point that even the CDC has actually issued a travel warning to Canada for Americans coming to Canada because of COVID.
Huh?
Yeah, and unfortunately, the Canadian government is kind of hindered in their efforts because they have to rely on shipping the product here instead of manufacturing on site.
But we have bought enough vaccines to vaccinate everybody 4 times over in the country.
Oh, I did not know that.
Yeah, I heard that somewhere. I don't recall where news somewhere, so it is something. It's reliable, and it's coming. There's just a question of when. And I think that the target was July to have enough vaccines for everybody in the country, and I think they're on target to have it for like next month. So I think we're going to see a big shift. I know I'm eligible to go, so I've really got to get off my butt and make that appointment.
Well, speaking of COVID vaccines, in Brazil, experts are warning now that Brazil's cases of COVID-19 could pose a global threat.
Oh, God.
Their health system is actually pushed to the brink, and the death could actually surpass the U.S. tolls by July, despite a smaller population.
Yeah.
Now, if you want to know, the population in the U.S. is about 325 to 350 million, I believe, right, Brent? Around there?
Yeah, I believe so.
The population of Brazil is 213,554,360.
So it's about 2/3.
Jesus.
So,
wow.
So, yeah. So,
significantly smaller, yet has significantly more.
We're going to have to start ragging on different countries than the U.S. This is going to feel weird.
There were 66,000 deaths in March alone. In Brazil.
What was it in the U.S.? Did you look that up?
No, I did not.
Okay.
But 66,000 in 1 month, that's a lot.
That is a very high number.
Their total is 340,000 deaths.
Jeez.
And that's their total. And the states are 500,000. So this, by the time July happens...
560, I believe.
And yet again...
Yeah, 561,000.
And yet again, as we've been saying on this show for so long now, the president, which is Jair Bolsonaro, I hope I didn't...
We're probably butchering that a bit.
He's known as the Trump of Brazil.
Oh, yay.
Yeah, he's a conservative, authoritarian guy, and he's basically saying to the population, stop whining.
Inconceivable!
He doesn't think this is a problem.
Of course not, and that's why people are going to keep dying there.
What an embarrassing fucking title to get too.
Right?
Like, you're the Donald Trump of fucking.
But he wears it as a badge of
America.
He wears it as a badge of pride. And I've said this on the show.
If you kill off your whole voter base, there's no way to really lose the next election.
I've said this on the show many times. All the countries they've had a big COVID problem. We're talking the U.S. of course, and Brazil, and we're talking Spain, Russia,
the UK.
All these governments are authoritarian, conservative governments. People that don't believe in the science, people that don't listen to the scientists, and basically say, the economy is the only thing that matters. We don't want to close down anything. We don't want to do social distancing. My rights, blah, blah, blah. Every single one of them. So is this a surprise?
Yeah, not at all.
No.
There was this anti-masker I was arguing with, and she says, I listen to real science, not political science. I don't need to wear a mask. It was bad. I mean, we all jumped all over her. It was a lot of fun, but
define political science, because I think we have two different definitions.
Oh God!
Well,
I just said, make sure you tell your doctor not to wear a mask next time you need a surgery.
Yeah, exactly. Their definition of political science is any science fact that doesn't really fit into their worldview,
their narrative.
Right? And that's political science as far as they're concerned.
Oh man!
And I'd just be like, wrong. Political science is a science that people study.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. It's like dinosaurs existed. No, that's political science because I'm a Christian.
But it seems like these numbers are getting a little bit smaller. Like I'm starting to see less and less idiots, and maybe it's because I'm weeding out the groups on Facebook where the idiots exist. But I'm really hoping that it's that we're kind of starting to get it.
Eventually we'll beat the disease, but it's
I think so.
But it's taking longer than it should.
Vacation.
It's taking longer than it should.
I had to cancel Hawaii. It would have been, I think, April 16th or April 17th was our flight that I had booked that had to be canceled. So it's coming up on a year that I had to cancel a trip that was like the trip of a lifetime for me. And I fucking want to go. Like, God damn it.
Well, we might have a consolation prize. We'll have to go to Florida to see Brent.
I can,
There you go.
I can absolutely do that.
Our beaches were voted better, so
there we go.
Yeah.
There you go.
Hawaii.
Yeah,
I don't know
I want a
why
pet
or
alligator.
how they came to that.
Have you been to
conclusion,
Hawaii? I
but-
really want to go to Hawaii. I'll get to Hawaii. I'll get to Florida because there's Universal Studios down there. I have to go see that Harry Potter castle.
No, you want to see Brent
Hell
first,
yeah.
right?
It's fun.
Sure, Brent can take me as a tour.
We can go together to the Harry Potter castle.
Perfect.
I'll go again.
Let's go. And I'll even do they do front of the line passes at that Universal Studios like they do in California, where you pay a little bit extra and you get to like bump the line and piss off all the people that have been standing in line for hours?
Anyway,
Yeah, we got the line pass. Yeah,
we'll keep going.
Moving on.
It costs like a bit more money. But.
Hey,
Speaking of sandy beaches, did you guys hear that in Egypt they discovered a 3,000-year-old lost city?
Yes.
And hailed it as one of the most important discoveries of our time. It was dubbed the Lost Golden City. It was known as Aten, and it was during Amenhotep III. This is between 1391 to 1353 BCE. It's about 300 miles south of Cairo, near the Valley of the Kings. They found jewelry, tools. They started finding walls, and the more they dug, the more they found walls. And they uncovered an entire city like that. And they found a bakery, administrative district, a residential district.
Whoa!
Yeah,
I always wanted to be an archaeologist. Like, what a fun job! You have no idea what you're going to find.
Now the funny thing is Amenhotep III and his wife Queen Tayi, I think it's pronounced Tayi. They actually have the mummies, and they were actually circulated throughout Cairo last week, along with 17 other kings and 3 queens, and as a bit of a celebration thing. They kind of had a parade of mummies. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, that is.
So
it's like totally the opener of like a movie. Like, we're gonna parade the mummies, and then they all break out of them, and then Superman and Batman have to come like and fight them or something. I don't know. But,
it's Brendan Fraser and Tom Cruise.
That's awesome.
That's what they have to And
Batman and Superman.
Last but not least, there's an Eastern Caribbean island of Saint Vincent, if you prefer, that's begun evacuation because their volcano is about to erupt.
Ooh, sorry, where is that again?
This is actually not far from Brent. If you think of the Americas in your mind,
there's a volcano near me.
Well, not that far. Actually, if Brent goes south of Brent, you'll have Cuba, right?
Yep.
And if you go a bit east of that, you'll have Haiti and the Dominican Republic, right? If you go a bit more southeast of that, you have a little chain of volcano islands that point towards South America.
Wow.
St. Vincent is in one of those.
Oh, okay.
So Brent's not that far from there, actually.
My buddy's the guy I work with is from St. Vincent.
But there we go.
That's crazy. Oh man! So make sure his family's
okay.
Yeah. So the authorities right now are evacuating pretty much everybody around La Soufrière, which is the name of the volcano. They're putting them on cruise ships and sending them to nearby islands. So there's approximately 16,000 people that will need to be evacuated. Now the problem is with COVID-19, it's slowing down the process because these other islands don't necessarily want to receive people that have not been vaccinated.
Of course.
Right.
Oh, shit.
Wow. So this is going to cause a problem. We have to keep an eye on it. The volcano erupted in 1979 and 1902. The volcano's killed at least 1,600 people at this point.
Wow.
So who knows? We might have a nice eruption soon. Apparently, the mountain is actually glowing. It could be going off any day now.
Wow.
So at the time we record this, who knows? It might have already erupted. Go up.
This is like the intersectionality of like humanitarian disasters,
right?
Yeah, exactly.
Welcome to 2021.
And this is actually a funny reminder that we talked about COVID a bit early on there, and of course life kind of stopped, but the world doesn't stop because of COVID. This is one of the reasons why you have to tackle these problems as soon as possible, because nature doesn't wait.
Yeah.
Nature will toss the other ball at you, right?
Yep.
So now if you can't evacuate people because you're afraid that the population might, bring COVID to another place, you've just aggravated the problem here because you're walking and you're sleeping on the job here. This is why you have to listen to science and you have to fund it and get on the problem as quick as possible.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it was like we were having like a major surge in cases like a few months ago, and then a hurricane was coming, and I was just like, "Holy shit, this is going to be great!" All the people in the fucking shelters that have been forced out of their safe place to stay away from the virus, now they have to go be around a bunch of people.
Exactly.
It's like one disaster just fucking messes up the other.
And that's why the marginalized in general are so much more affected by COVID than the rest of us. Like we're able to live just the two of us in a house.
Some kind of isolation, yeah.
And so we don't have to be around 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12 people who are all working in the public sector, who are all around thousands of people every day. Like, it's sad.
Yeah.
I can't wait to see the tail end of this.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, anyway, that's good for that. So, my dear Sabrina, you don't have a top 10 this week.
No.
You have this day in history.
This week in history.
Of course, this week in history. I'm sorry, let's get that music going.
Back to the future!
Woohoo! I love that theme song.
Yeah, just for a little bit of a switch up, and do something different. And I really do like history, so I thought, let's just pick a little couple facts from each day in this next week coming up and find some interesting things. So, I'm doing for the week of April 11th to the 17th. On April 11th, 1947, Jackie Robinson became the first black player in Major League Baseball.
Jackie Robinson.
Yep, he played an exhibition game against the Yankees on April 11th for the Brooklyn Dodgers.
I remember having a book as a child. It was a very short illustrated, but the book was named. They had a series of books. It was called a lesson in a certain virtue, right? And for Jackie Robinson, it was a lesson in courage, and it was a Jackie Robinson story. Yeah.
So on April 12, 1961, I'm going to totally slaughter this name. Yuri Gagarin?
Yuri Gagarin, yes.
I did it right?
Yeah.
Oh, woo.
Yuri Gagarin.
He became the first man to orbit Earth. So he's also not only the first man to orbit Earth, he's also the first human to journey into space.
And at the time, the U.S. were terrified of this man.
Of course.
Because the Russians...
he's a Russian cosmonaut.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It was the Cold War. They were actually terrified that the first man in space was actually a Russian.
Yeah. So, moving forward to April...
He might get superpowers. We don't know.
Well,
yeah, exactly.
That's how the Fantastic Four happened, right?
Right. So on April 13th, 1976, the $2 bill was reintroduced into the United States currency.
Why?
Right?
It was reintroduced?
Right, yeah. So it was originally commissioned in 1862, and then they discontinued it in 1966, and then they reintroduced it in 1976 as a part of the bicentennial celebration. But it hasn't been issued since 2003. So I think you'll still find it in circulation on the odd occasion in the States, but for the most part you don't see it.
Yeah, my dad would collect them. It's just funny because you wonder who was dude, when I'm buying a candy bar, I'd like to just use one bill. Okay, I don't need to.
we had a $2 bill before we got our $2 coin. Yeah.
Although the inflation at that point was probably a quarter or something for anyway,
30 pesos.
But still, the joke stands. You get it.
On April 14th, 1865. Abraham Lincoln was assassinated in Ford's Theater by John Wilkes Booth.
Ooh.
Oh.
Yeah, so that's coming up. And then coming up on April 15th, of course, that's April 15th, 1912. I know this date. I don't know if anybody else does, but it's the day the Titanic sunk.
Oh, shit.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a big deal.
Yeah.
It's funny, too. My great-grandmother was actually alive when that happened. And then she just died
Yeah, my great-grandma would have been alive then as well. My grandmother was born 10 years later. So on April 16th, 1862, our good old President Lincoln, he actually abolished slavery on that day in 1862. And last but not least, the Bay of Pigs invasion was on April 17th, 1961.
Yes, that's the Cuban failed invasion.
Yes, so we'll see if I do a top 10 next week, or maybe another week in history.
It's raised so many conspiracies that failed invasion there.
Right?
So many conspiracies because people
Really?
Well, it was supposed to be a pretext, for lack of a better term here, a false flag attack, right? And it
I
failed.
love the false flags.
Exactly,
I love
and
that
but that put the idea in the mind of the general population that the U.S. government is willing to do false flag operations on a regular basis, and this is the kind of stuff that gave rise to guys like Alex Jones and stuff like that, because they say, well, of course, false flag operations happens all the time. Remember the Bay of Pigs? That's exactly it.
Yeah. In 1961, which would be 50 years ago this year. No, 60 years ago. My math's bad.
Yeah, I mean, and it's like anytime, the U.S. government is trying to be purposefully dishonest.
Let's look at what they did 60 years
within
ago.
warfare and stuff like that. And they're like, see, they're dishonest, man. They're all lying. It's all lies, dude. They're just their whole deal.
They've been doing it for 6 years.
That's exactly it. This is exactly a line that somebody like Rush Limbaugh would use, or somebody like Alex Jones would use. It's like,
do you remember those nuclear tests in, where was it, Las Vegas?
You think 9/11 was not an inside job? Do you remember the Bay of Pigs? There you go, right? So that's exactly how they think.
That shit.
That's exactly how they think. And you know what? For lack of playing devil's advocate for half a second here, part of it makes sense.
Yeah.
If you can think that your government has a history of being able to do these kind of things, of doing attacks,
we uncovered this one. How many haven't we uncovered?
Yeah, exactly. Right?
What else has been classified?
I'm constantly getting into it with this fucking guy online where he says that conspiracy theories have never been proven to be true, and I'm just like, that's not right.
That's not true.
He defined conspiracies that way. He was like, the definition of conspiracies are things that have never been demonstrated to be true, and I'm like, that's not the definition of conspiracy theories, because the Tuskegee experiments. Are you kidding me? We have shit. MK Ultra.
I was just gonna say,
that
happened
have
here.
Stuff that's real that did happen that led to this distrust, and that's almost why it's that much more fucked up that they did that shit.
Yep.
Yeah.
Because now we have crazy people just assuming they're doing it all the time, and they almost have I wouldn't say good reasoning, but it's like they have a reason.
Oh yeah, they definitely have a
great
defensible position to stand at. Just really do look at it. It did exist.
And this is the attraction.
And how many years did it take for us to uncover MK Ultra?
Yeah. And this is the attraction of conspiracy theories, because, there's always a grain of truth amongst them, right? The Italian Mafia was a conspiracy at some point.
Exactly.
So was the Yakuza. Was a conspiracy. There's no Mafia gang out there that rules the underworld. Yeah, there is. There actually is. But, this is the thing, right?
We're just not leaving symbol trails for you to follow. You know what I mean?
I love these guys. These guys, and they have these videos that if you fold an American dollar bill like this,
and look at it, you can see the eye.
Yeah, you can see.
The buildings are blowing up. Whatever, man.
That's exactly what.
Oh yeah, I think they said, look, you can see the Twin Towers, and then they're not there anymore. Oh yeah, right.
And think about it. You're making a paper airplane. Okay, I mean. My logic is impossible.
Oh god!
It never crosses their mind. It seems to cross their mind that if, let's say, for example, there is, for lack of a better term, an Illuminati, right, that controls the world. Why would you leave clues to your plan on dollar bills
for everybody
to find out?
There's that eye.
Somebody that's trying to hide is also trying to lead just a couple people to the truth just to fuck with them.
Yeah. But I'll admit that as a late teen, 18, 19-ish, I got sucked in.
Oh, so did I.
I had a friend who was just convinced about the Illuminati. And I mean, he was, R.I.P., but he was beyond conspiracy theorists, like aliens, are who seeded Earth. That they the pyramids weren't built they were built to land aircraft, and that they weren't built to entomb kings. That all the chambers were gas chambers to refuel aircraft. And I mean, I could go on and on and on. He said something about his dad not being his dad. That Jimmy Hoffa was his father.
Oh my god!
I loved him to death, but man. Man, was he entertaining.
Oh, yeah, dude, the first time that somebody showed me, did the whole Illuminati spiel, and then showed me a Marlboro pack, where it's like a pyramid, and then when you open the pack, the little capstone comes off, you know? I was sold. That was my epistemology. I was like, "Yep, you got it. That's totally real."
See, they used to get me with things like the Egyptians didn't build the pyramids, and they say, "Well, what makes you think that?" They said, the most powerful cranes that we have today can't lift those rocks, and that's true to a certain extent.
You're right.
That's absolutely true. But that doesn't mean because we don't know. It's Neil deGrasse Tyson that basically said that. Just because you don't know exactly how we did it doesn't mean they didn't do it.
Right.
Doesn't mean an alien force came down and did it all of a sudden, right?
Right.
And of course, you can see that translating to public consciousness because then you have movies like, what was that movie with Stargate? What's exactly that?
Yeah.
You have the alien ship that lands on top of the pyramid like some kind of landing base, right?
Great movie. Great fucking movie. Kurt Russell, badass.
Anyways.
Everybody likes Kurt Russell. Anyway, my dear Brent, you got another brilliant moment for us?
I do.
Brought to you by religion.
Another brilliant moment. So, we all see these different, I want to call them PSAs, right? And they're just, they get actors and, people that we generally like as a population to basically tell the public to do something that's helpful. For society, they're just like, hey, if we, maybe these people will listen to the actors that they like, which makes a lot of sense to a degree. I mean, because, that's, most people that are evangelical and whatnot, they will be completely against the LGBTQIA plus community until they're, somebody that they love comes out, and then they're like, oh man, yeah. So liking the person, like having admiration for the person or love for the person matters, right? And it's just funny that, because this latest PSA, and I'm going to play it in a second, I'm going to play 2 clips. And the first one is the PSA. And people lost their goddamn minds over this PSA. So I'm going to go ahead and play it. It's about getting vaccinated.
I'm Morgan Freeman. I'm not a doctor, but I trust science. And I'm told that for some reason people trust me. So here I am to say, I trust science and I got the vaccine. If you trust me, you'll get the vaccine. In math, it's called the distributive property. In people, it's called taking care of one another. Get the vaccine. Help make our world a safe place for us to enjoy ourselves again. Please.
Please. Pretty please. And I love Morgan Freeman.
I love Morgan Freeman too.
A beautiful voice. Like, he's just...
That's it. I'm calling, getting my vaccine tomorrow.
And I actually got to see him one time at the place that I was working. They were filming, they shut down half of it to film a movie. And I got to wave to him and say hi, and he turned around and said hi to me.
Oh,
but it's a big deal.
It is a big deal. I still talk about meeting Princess Di, and I was like 7, okay?
Oh, that's awesome. See? Holy shit. Holy shit, no, that's super cool.
She said I have beautiful eyes.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so cool. Wow. And so relative to, like, what's going on right now. But,
hey, it kind of is. Prince Philip died, man.
That later. But no, so there's this right-wing channel called Real America's Voice. Real America.
Of course, it's Real America.
I love they say that. Real America.
Yeah. Right? We're the real one. Like, you guys
the rest are fake.
And they just were not happy about that ad. They were very upset. And I'm going to play the second clip now, just because I don't even need to introduce it, really. I feel like you guys know where I'm going with this one.
This just bothers me. Not because I think that he doesn't have a right to his opinion. Not because I have any problem with him, pitching whatever product he wants to pitch for whatever product he wants to pitch for. Because he's acting like he doesn't realize that the reason people trust him is because he plays God in movies. Like, just say it, or I don't know.
Okay, sure.
I have a problem with I don't know. At some point, God's got to be sacred somewhere, right? Because we use him all the time in all the wrong ways.
God.
I guess that's it.
Yeah, I completely. I mean, you know, if smooth movie narrator voice guy tells you to get the vaccine, then by all means, you should definitely trust him. And he's like, if you trust me, why would we trust you? You're an actor. Your whole career is about faking. This is only going to matter to people who care what celebrities think about things. And I think that people who fall into that category, I can probably name them on one hand, unless they're on the left side of the aisle, in which case they're already probably getting the vaccine.
Oh, Jesus.
Oh, my God.
The Prince of God has sold his soul for a bargain basement price. I'm interested to know what that price is these days, by the way, the price of the soul on the black market.
Well, they need to exist. That would help. For us to be able to put some monetary value.
Okay, so there's a lot
I'm a little sick to my stomach.
There's a lot to unpack here. There's a lot to unpack. First of all, people like Morgan Freeman not because he played God, okay?
No.
They like Morgan Freeman because he's a good actor.
Yes. Yeah. Not even just because of the acting, though.
2 fucking movies. 2.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Two.
And how many other movies? Hello, he drove Miss Daisy.
Yeah. He's done so many fucking movies.
I trust him because Miss Daisy trusted him to drive her.
Yeah.
So I trust him. Okay?
It's a bit like saying Morgan Freeman's been in prison, therefore I trust his flawed schemes. You know?
What was that one, Shawshank?
The Shawshank Redemption.
Yes, that was an amazing movie. See?
That's the logic they're jumping to.
I love it.
However,
you can call it logic. They're just,
man,
that's their stupid thoughts that they're jumping to.
However, I'm going to give him one thing though.
Okay.
I don't think Morgan Freeman should have said in his PSA there,
if you trust me,
trust the vaccine.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't think he should have said that. I really think
that's what made me guffaw a bit.
I'm Morgan Freeman. I trust the science.
Mm-hmm.
I take the vaccine. I think you should too.
Yeah.
I think you should have kept it at that. As soon as he said, "People trust me, therefore you," I think that was his mistake there.
Yeah.
But I agree that their conclusion that because he played God somehow,
we trust him because of that. Trust me, that's not
he sold his soul because he's a Hollywood guy. It's like fuck you.
We trust him in spite of the fact that he played God. Okay.
Right? Like most of us don't even fucking remember. It was a comedy from like forever ago.
I don't even remember what movie, but I do kind of.
He was playing Bruce Almighty.
Yeah. Oh, Bruce Almighty. That's it. You said 2 movies though. Oh, was there a sequel? I didn't know that.
It was Bruce
I don't really
Almighty
like Jim Carrey that much. So.
Yeah, it was with Steve Carell, the second one.
Yeah.
It wasn't with Jim Carrey.
I'm trying to think of the name of it.
I do vaguely, but you know what? I stopped watching movies right around 2000, so...
Yeah.
And I think that was...
Steve Carell slowly turned into Noah or something like that.
I'm just revealing my ignorance.
Right, because he played that part 2 different times forever ago, like a decade almost ago. And then it's like, that's why they're angry.
God, though. If you really think about it, he made me question whether or not I was an atheist. So doesn't that mean no? Come on, did you believe me?
It's kind of weird there for a sec.
Oh man, no.
Well, there's a plethora of actors and actresses, even actresses actually, even singers that have played the role of God or Satan. So, are you gonna say, well, Viggo Mortensen's gonna take? Yeah, Alanis Morissette, exactly, in Dogma, right? So if she takes the vaccine, does that mean that, oh my God, you shouldn't listen to her? She sold her soul to the devil, obviously, for the vaccine.
Well, that's what exactly they'll latch on to.
And to be fair, she was the God in that whole series. So we're not just talking about Dogma, we're talking about all the movies. That's why Jay is always like, and brought down from God herself. Like all the other movies, because that's their little universe.
Yeah.
Universe.
So what about like Chris Hemsworth? He's like the God of thunder. And what if he takes the vaccine? Does that mean he sold his soul to Hela? Or did Loki come in at some point too?
They're really looking for any reason to just not do the vaccine.
Yeah.
So
we gotta be mad about this. Can we figure it out? We need a meeting to get mad so we can talk about why we're mad. Because we're just mad, but because she's like, I don't know. I just don't like this. And it's like, okay, that was accurate. Like what you just said was the only accurate thing. Because you said, I don't know. accurate.
Yeah.
But this makes me mad. All the rest of the shit she said was bullshit.
And it makes me mad in return because this kind of stupid nonsense has real world consequences.
Absolutely does.
You know, and we just talked about this in the chit chat with the island of St. Vincent and stuff like that. Those are real consequences to people just saying, well, I don't trust the vaccine because
yeah,
you know, because Ted Cruz said something about it.
So I don't care if you're going to be burnt up in a volcano. Go home.
Exactly. There are real lives at stakes here because of this kind of stupid ignorance.
I mean, I'm making light of it, but it's true.
Yeah.
That's what's so fucked up about the right. Literally politicizing a fucking virus, a pandemic, you know, and making it like, hey, they care about the pandemic. We're big, strong, strapping Americans that are tough or you know, of whatever country, because it seems to be almost ubiquitous between the different countries. I mean, clearly Canada's going through its sort of own conservative issues with the coronavirus. And the conservatives are all the ones going, yeah, we don't. That's not real. Like, it's not a big deal. It's not.
I mean, these are the kind of people. These are the kind of people that, you know, when Jonas Salks came out with the polio vaccine and gave it to the world.
Yeah.
You know, and you know, these are the kind of people that they would call him a socialist, right? Yeah. It's like, dude, you know,
like, you asshole.
But at the same time, if Jonas Salks had basically not given the vaccine and they developed a patent and gotten rich off it,
yeah, could you imagine?
Then they would have said he sold his soul to the devil.
Yeah,
right.
That's very true.
You can't win. You can't win with these people.
You're right.
You can't win, and this is why. This is why when we had that little thing with your friend Dallas there, this is why I was saying, you know, conservatism is essentially dragging a big anchor behind you, just slowing down humanity on the boat to progress. It just is that.
But you know what's good? You actually made him think. Yeah. You got him thinking.
Oh, yeah.
He's been thinking about it for days, clearly.
Yeah. And minutes. He's thinking about this for several minutes. You know.
Well, I mean, I'm glad that he's had a chance to come up with his answers.
y'all both did like so good on that, because like I don't know why I was drawing a blank, and then Kevin, you threw that out there about that, and then Sabrina, you also pointed out, they're like, what's a good nation? Like, what do you mean by a thriving nation? Is it
just because you got money? Like, so the fuck what if you're all buying?
Because you're like, is it either wealth or well-being?
Anyway, we won't go there.
Let's not open that can of worms, because the rest of the audience have no idea what we're talking about.
Yeah, that's true. We can put links in the show notes if you've got links to that show. It's a live that Brent did. So.
Anyway, so let's take a quick pause, and when we come back, we'll be with Janice Selbie, and we'll be talking about the conference on religious trauma. So stay with us.
Hi, I'm the Supreme Irreverend Dr. Randy Tyson from the Legion of Reason Diversion. Join me and my co-hosts, Christine Shelska, Twyla, and Nate Phelps, as we explore issues at the intersection of atheism, humanism, and skepticism. Topics range from alternative medicine to the interference of religion in public policy. We often have special guests to help us understand the topic du jour. Previous guests include biologist Jerry Coyne, ex-Muslim author Ali Rizvi, philosopher Peter Boghossian, and the late physicist Victor Stanger. You can watch us on the Legion of Reason YouTube channel or subscribe to the audio version through your favorite podcatcher such as iTunes or Stitcher. And don't forget to like the Legion of Reason Facebook page.
Hi, I'm God. And I just wanted to make sure to tell you not to listen to Unapologetics on Stitcher and SoundCloud. That's Unapologetics with an X at the end. But, definitely do not listen to the show. I mean, I swear to me, alright, I will murder my son. I kind of already did that, but just don't listen to the show, okay? Hey, Lucy.
Can you not call me that, okay? We already went over what my name is, okay? It's Lucifer.
Alright, look, Luce. You wanna come with me? I'm gonna go fuck with this guy, Joe.
don't do that, okay? Can you just leave him alone?
Yeah, I'm gonna kill his family.
No, don't do that.
I'm gonna give him sores all over his body.
Don't do that. That's disgusting.
And I'm gonna kill all of his livestock. You know.
Stop saying things. Just stop.
And I'm gonna blame the whole thing on you. All right, let's go, bud. Remember, don't listen to Unapologetics on Stitcher and SoundCloud.
Hey, definitely listen to that show. It's awesome. It's really cool. He's really a dick.
I heard that.
Every night on television we see satire, we see comedy, we see people poking fun at politicians, at all sorts of things. Why should religion, especially the Muslim religion, why should that be immune from people making fun of it? Not that this is making fun of it, I understand, but even so, why should you think that Islam should be uniquely immune from the things that politicians are not immune from and the rest of us are not immune from? Why are you so privileged in taking offense?
All right, our next guest is a former Christian fundamentalist. She's a professional counselor, but don't ask her for a favor. She's going to be one of the speakers and host of the conference on religious drama. She's a snappy dresser and a snazzy dancer. Janice Selbie, thank you so much for being on the show with us.
Oh, it's such a pleasure. Thank you for inviting me.
We'll send you the $50 check as we promise.
We'll just get your mailing address after the show.
Janice,
you gotta raise.
For our audience that might not be familiar with your body of work and what you're doing there, maybe you'd be so gracious to give us a good introduction as to who you are.
You bet. Sure. I'm Canadian. I'm in the Okanagan Valley.
Oh, you're not too far from us.
You're really not far.
Not too far at all. I know. I could just about stop in for a visit. What I grew up in is the Pentecostal tradition, and I took it quite seriously. So in my family, the Bible was considered literal and inerrant. Science wasn't really something that was encouraged or discussed in my family, and certainly neither was sexuality or other things that actually might have been helpful to know about. And so I grew up Pentecostal, and then after I married an equally religious person, and he decided he wanted to become a minister, so we moved to Alberta, and he attended conservative Bible college there. And while we were there, I started homeschooling our children and really took a deep dive into fundamentalism at that point. And I noticed in the grocery store in the small town where we lived, these ladies would come in and they looked quite different from everybody else. They were always wearing very modest skirts or dresses, and they always had their hair covered with a black covering over top of their bun. And so I knew they were religious, but I also knew we didn't have Amish people in that part of Canada. So I wondered what it was all about, and so I asked my husband, and he said that they were definitely Christian women, and that the New Testament talks about how women are supposed to dress. So I did a whole lot of research on that, and then I determined that those ladies and their husbands seemed to be the only ones that were really, truly following the Bible. And so I started doing likewise. I got rid of all my jewelry and makeup and pants and shorts and just went all to long skirts and dresses, and started covering my hair, and didn't cut my hair for several years after that, and also imposed that on my daughters as well. And they were little at the time, but so my children never had their hair cut, and they never even wore pants for many years. They just wore skirts and dresses and jumpers. And we didn't have TV, and we tried to limit any outside influences, any secular influences in our home. So we weren't reading newspapers or magazines. All that we were being fed was a steady diet of fundamentalist Christian doctrine. So we would listen to Focus on the Family and trusted James Dobson very much about how we should raise our children. I was becoming increasingly fundamentalist, and this became an issue for my husband. We're not married anymore, but we remain quite good friends. And while I was raised in religion, he didn't become religious until very late in his teens, maybe about 18 years old. And he was concerned, and he said to me at one point, "You're making your circle smaller and smaller. How small are you prepared to make your circle?" And I both appreciated and was offended by his suggestion, because to me, I was simply trying to be as obedient as possible to Scripture. And why wouldn't he appreciate that? When in actual fact, what was happening was he had married someone that he wanted to be more of an equal with him. And the more I stepped back into the really subservient role that fundamentalists say that women must have, it put more and more pressure on him to have to make decisions and really be the head of the family and lead the family in a biblical way. So there was definitely tension there. And then we moved to an even smaller town in Saskatchewan, and he took on a role as a pastor there. And our marriage was, it was a difficult marriage. It was a hard marriage. And that year that we were in Saskatchewan was very difficult. We just seemed to be beset by crisis after crisis in my family of origin. Certainly, including my own parents splitting up after 40 years, and my nephew being incarcerated for killing another man, and there were a few other things that happened. And then my husband lost his job, and after that, then our daughter received a life-threatening diagnosis. So there was so many terrible things that happened in a very short amount of time, and it was really traumatizing for me, and it actually shook me free from my cognitive dissonance around religion. It caused me to actually pause and say, wait a minute, I think I've bet on the wrong horse. I don't know anyone who has tried harder than me to live a godly life, and we're just having all sorts of terrible calamities. So what's going on here? And that gave me the breathing space that I needed in order to start examining religions and philosophies outside of Christianity.
Okay, I've got so many questions here. So many questions. Okay, first of all, from a male point of view, okay, I once in a while I bump in, especially around here, around Chilliwack and stuff like that, you'll see some of these conservative Christian, usually Mennonite women. And they'll have the little headgear, and they'll have the long skirt and all that. As a male, I don't pay much attention to how I dress, but I do know that getting dressed is a bit of an expression of yourself. So, I'm wearing jeans and a t-shirt right now. But how comfortable is it as a woman to wear these long skirts and this hair bonnet and stuff like that? It can't possibly be comfortable. Or is it?
It's not that bad.
What it does is, psychologically speaking, I certainly felt that I was becoming holier and holier by eschewing anything related to the world, anything secular. So if there was any suffering that occurred as a result of my obedience, it just really fed into that martyr syndrome. This is all for the sake of the gospel. That's
how much I care.
That's exactly right. And they were Mennonites that I was in contact with, and we did actually start attending their church services. And now I look back on it, and I feel somewhat privileged that I was able to gain a glimpse into a world that most people will never really know about and will just be curious about. But they had really strict rules. Even when I was wearing long skirts and dresses, the pattern on the material couldn't be larger than a quarter, and it couldn't be smaller than a nickel.
Wow.
Wow.
So there were definitely rules, because to wear anything larger, to wear a print that's too bold, would draw attention to you. Yep. And if you wore a print that was too small, it would be too busy. And again, drawing attention to you. And you're supposed to basically just be an invisible servant.
Yes, especially as a woman.
Okay, so what if...
And real quick, I'm sorry, Kevin.
No, go for it.
No, real quick, I would say there is some comfort in that, in the fact that you're blending in.
Kind of, yes, especially as an introvert.
Yeah, especially, absolutely. If you're an introvert, see, I was always extroverted, but I still felt a comfort of like blending in, because I'm like what you're explaining is very similar to what I went through being raised and whatnot.
Yeah, there were definite psychological payoffs for it, and also, so we were living in Alberta, and Alberta tends to be probably one of the most religious of our provinces, one of the most conservative. And there were times, I remember being in a Christian bookstore, and a man paid for my entire purchase. And I remember us being out for dinner at one time, and a couple paid for our meal. So people who were trying to show me that they approved of my very conservative views.
See, I'm going back to the pattern thing here on the dress, because I'm trying to find a loophole. So what if you have a pattern that's that's smaller than a quarter but bigger than a nickel, but it's like a flaming skull, or it's
I'm sure there's rules against.
Or it's like nothing but penises or something like that. You're allowed to do that.
A rose that looks like a vagina.
Yeah, you're allowed to do that. I mean, I'm just trying to find a loophole here.
You could probably do the rose.
You could do the rose?
I think not.
No?
And they also, if you bought a car, if you owned a car, you were expected to rip out the stereo.
Wow.
In the car, because that also would show that you were holy and not going to be influenced by the world. You could have a fax machine if you were a man who owned a business, but you couldn't have like an espresso maker or anything like that. And I noticed that the women, they did have dishwashers and microwaves, but so like there were just arbitrary rules, and the rules were hugely appealing to me, because having grown up in a fundamentalist household with a father who was also a narcissist but extremely religious, if my siblings and I broke the rules, we would be punished, sometimes punished heavily for it. So rules became very attractive to me because I felt safe within rules. And that also was something that wasn't an issue for my husband at the time. So he couldn't really relate to that. And it took me years of reflection after I left to understand that myself.
Okay.
I really thought you were going to be like, yeah, we had dishwashers, but they were people. They were actually people.
It was the kids.
The kids with the dishwashers.
My daughters, yeah, that's right.
I think we should do a Patreon goal and just do these dresses with like penises for conservative women in those churches, and just have a whole bunch of them printed out and just distribute them or something.
Oh, you're so funny.
Maybe they could use those for the head coverings.
No, I gotta ask though. Again, from a woman's point of view, because as a male, I don't understand that. But even as a guy, once in a while, you'll spot a guy that he's wearing like this really nice suit, and you're looking at him and say, "Damn, I would look good in that." But when you're a woman in this conservative milieu, for lack of a better term, and you have to wear these very unflattering outfits, and you see a woman walking by that she's wearing something tasteful but still looks kind of sexy, would you look at this woman and say, I kind of wish, or was it like totally too taboo? Even a woman wants to be sexy for her man too. A man wants to be sexy for his woman too, right?
Well, let me tell you a little story that is a true story that happened on the Bible College campus.
I gotta get a full for this one. All right.
This is after I started wearing very conservative clothing and covering my head. And I was the only one on the entire campus, the only spouse, the only person there who had adopted these measures. And so there were times when spouses were expected to also attend chapel, or I could attend in lieu of my husband if he had something else to do. And so I was there one time dressed very modestly, and the college had a guest speaker come in, a woman who was speaking on some topic or other. She was a young lady. She was very attractive, and she happened to be wearing a pantsuit, and I was mortified. And so after, I took it upon myself to go up to her and just fill her in on the verses from the New Testament to remind her her place was to set an example for the other women and not to cause a brother to stumble. And her jaw just dropped. And she felt, I mean, what could she say other than, okay. Yeah. And I just felt like I had done a huge favor for Jesus at that point. And now I'm like, oh my God, that's so cringeworthy. Cringe, lady, if you're listening, I'm very sorry.
Walk away like nailed it. It's awesome.
Oh wow, that's.
I was the Karen of the church. I'd like to see the manager play.
I think they're all Karens in the church now.
Oh, yeah, very true.
So okay, so what prompted, if I might ask, what prompted your apostasy? I mean, you talked a bit about having a bit of a revelation there. Like, can you elaborate on that?
Yeah. When so many calamities befell our family, and particularly with our daughter's diagnosis, and then we also went bankrupt, partly as trying to pay for Bible college and then also having to cover some of her medical costs. That was pretty much the last straw for me, because I figured there might be no God, but if there is a God and he thinks it's okay to afflict my child with this, or to allow my child to be afflicted with this, I don't want anything to do with that God. But I didn't tell my husband, who he was already drifting. He had stopped attending church. It was just me on Sundays dragging my kids out to church, who really weren't very interested in going anymore anyway.
But hold on a second, didn't you just say he was a pastor?
He was going to be a pastor.
When we were in Saskatchewan, and then it didn't work out. And he, I think, was so devastated after that, because it really was the death of a dream for him. And so that really kind of, he wasn't interested in things after that, although we never talked about it, so I didn't know what was going on with him. And then we had moved back to our hometown, and across the street from us, as fate would have it, was a used bookstore, and they had a little section in the back of that bookstore. This was like in the early 2000s, and so there was a doorway in the back of the bookstore with a long velvet curtain, and you had to pull the curtain back to go in there, and there was a sign above it that said occult and alternative religion. So I was always like, don't go back there, and then now I was like, well, I'm going back there, I'm going to see what's back there. I hope I don't get struck by lightning.
I'm relieved. For a second I thought you were going to say it was the porn section in the bookstore, you know.
That's what I was thinking.
Me too.
There's a rope and a ribbon and a curtain. It's like,
That's what it was at the video store.
That's right. Yeah, no, this wasn't that. But it might as well have been, for how much courage it took for me to go back there. I had to pluck up all my courage. And so I went back there, and no lightning struck me. And I was just looking around. I was in a cold sweat and trying to find some book that might educate me but not directly send me to hell. And so I found a book that seemed right. It was about comparing the teachings of Jesus and Muhammad and Confucius and Buddha. And so I took the book up to the cashier, and I, not even a word of a joke, I asked her to put it in a brown bag. A brown bag. I did not want anyone to see. And I purchased that book, and I ran to our house across the street, and hid that book in the safest place I knew, which was my underwear drawer, because I was sure even God would not look in my underwear drawer.
Are you kidding? Jesus is always in your underwear drawer. He's always there.
That's awesome.
So then I didn't, I didn't bother telling anyone about that purchase, because I was pretty mortified myself. But I would sneak read it. Eventually made my way through, and thought it was interesting enough that I would go back to that little bookstore. And then I stumbled into the whole New Age deal and lots of books by Louise Hay. And so I pretty much went from fundamentalist Christianity and did a headlong dive into New Age and Eastern mysticism. And I grew dreadlocks, and I got tattoos, and I had incense, and I tried, smoking everything, and just so my kids were getting whiplash, like, Mom, what the hell?
Mom is cool all of a sudden. What the hell happened?
Oh my God. I have this one memory I'll never forget. It was so funny. I'm standing on the corner waiting to cross the street, and my little girl must have been 10 at the time, and the kids were in Christian school. I'd stopped homeschooling them because I had to start going to work because Kelowna was very expensive. But so I was doing this mental transition out of Christianity into Eastern stuff, and some guy comes up to my daughter and I at the corner, because of course I have these dreadlocks, and he goes, hey, you got any weed? And my daughter looks at him, she says, yeah, right, this is my mom. And then in the meantime, my hand is in the pocket of my coat on the tail end joint there.
That's awesome.
That was a good one.
I got some weed and some ecstasy too. You want some?
Ecstasy came later, as did lots of other things. First, I had to get to a point where I became public about the things that were going on with me, and then came the end of my marriage, and then try and start dating again after 20 years. And there was no internet when when my husband and I met, so then everything was just shocking. Plenty of fish. Oh my God. Pictures of their anatomy. It was quite an education, that's for sure. But each partner that I had, like each significant partner after, so like living with the other person, was also instrumental in my growth. Because they didn't have the baggage, the religious baggage that I had or that my ex-husband had. So spending time in the company of people who are just unencumbered by religion was a huge eye-opener and such a relief. It just felt like I could breathe. I wasn't fined. That beach ball that you hold under the water, take your hands off it and it goes splashing up and gets water everywhere. That's kind of what my deconversion was like. It wasn't pretty. It was messy, but I survived it. And so did my children, and so did their father, and we remain all quite close.
That's fantastic. That's a fantastic story. I love it. So, and now you decide to move forward and actually kind of, for lack of a better term, spread the word on religious trauma, and you're essentially hosting a conference on religious trauma, which is CORT 2021. Tell us about it.
Yes, thank you. I'm very excited about it. Part of my own journey was trying to figure out exactly where I had come from and what happened. So I started doing a lot of research on cults and undue influence, and seeing a lot of crossover there, and also PTSD. And I went back to school to become a counselor, and then I started finding out about Dr. Marlene Winnell. And Dr. Winnell wrote a fantastic book called Leaving the Fold. And I hope anyone who's listening to your podcast, if they're dealing with religious trauma, I want them to read that book, Leaving the Fold. It's helped thousands of people, and it helped me. And then I got in touch with Dr. Winnell personally, and I was able to attend a number of her events and get to know her as a friend and a mentor. And I told her I wanted to do a conference on religious trauma. And she's like, well, a conference is a big deal. It's a lot of work. Are you sure? I'm like, oh, yeah, I'm sure. Oh, my God. If you ever want to put together a conference, call me and I will talk you out of it, because it is so much work. It's a lot of fun, too. It's AFGO. It's another freaking growth opportunity. So I have so many wonderful speakers who are giving their time to participate in this inaugural event. No one's ever done an entire conference on religious trauma. So we have expert speakers like Dr. Winnell and, of course, Dr. Daryl Ray. Dan Barker is going to be one of our speakers. And then we also have folks like Yasmin Mohammed. I don't know if you're familiar with her, but she's fantastic. She was in the Muslim tradition, and she's written a book called Unveiled. And Nathan Phelps, formerly of Westboro Baptist. Nate's going to be one of our speakers. I think we've got about 20 people. Mandisa Thomas, also from Black Non-Believers.
Love Mandisa.
We've got a ton of speakers, and whether they are educated in religious trauma and psychology, or whether they have personally experienced it themselves, I think people are just going to be spellbound by each of the speakers. And my hope is that therapists will attend and be educated, become educated on religious trauma syndrome, and also have a greater understanding of how they can work with their clients to be helping their clients recover from this, and also for the general public who are just interested. Because we're having Rick Allen Ross also, who's a cult expert. He's going to be giving an address also. So it's just going to be so interesting. And there are continuing education credits available. I want to put that out there for professionals in the mental health field who will be attending.
Oh, that's fantastic.
That is fantastic. And God knows we could use a lot of therapy in this show.
Don't get me started.
This is why you're here. You reach the bottom of the barrel. Might as well start from the bottom here at Left of the Valley and climb up from there. But I guess my question is how come this is taking so long to happen? How come, like you say, you're hoping even therapists will come in there. You would think that after all this damage that religion has done, there would have been a call for this kind of conference to happen before now. Why did you figure it's taking so long for the people to notice this?
I think because religion is like the last gigantic sacred cow. People do not like... they don't even like to speak about religion with other people. It's one of the things we're told not to. Don't discuss politics and religion. Exactly. I say we have to discuss these things. We have to be having dialogue about these things, and particularly in light of what transpired in the United States over the last 4 years with that individual who was...
he who shall not be named.
And there were so many Christians who supported him, and that has really increased the speed of the rise of the nuns, as I like to call it. So people who are no longer affiliated with any religion. So on their tax form, they might check the box that says none for religious affiliation. So having Trump in office...
That was me straight up. Like, that was exactly what was the catalyst that caused me to go. Maybe if I don't recognize, like, that, or if I don't understand what a Republican is, because I didn't. I just knew I was one because I had to, And then now maybe I'm. What else am I wrong about? Because clearly I'm wrong about this. But anyway, I'm sorry. Continue.
I'm so glad that's very affirming to me that you say that, because originally I had hoped to do CORT in 2020, and then the virus hit and everything was sidelined, and it was hugely disappointing to me on many levels. But now I see it's actually worked out even better that we are hosting it in 2021 instead, and hosting it online, because it's open to people all around the world. And we do have attendees from Australia, from Europe, from the United Kingdom. People are very interested, and the timing is even better now than it was before, because
Satan has a plan for you.
Starting to wake up and shake their head and saying, what did I believe? Like, why? What just happened to me? I was in that religion for 30 years or whatever it was. For me, it was 40 years. And now I'm starting to see that it's not what I thought it was.
Right. See, I told you, Satan has a plan for you. I knew that. See, right there. That's why he threw COVID just so we could postpone court for 1 year. That's exactly what happened.
More attendees.
Yes.
I have an amazing plan. It's going to be great. You're going to love it. Okay.
Thank you, Beelzebub.
Thank you, Beelzebub.
Oh, goodness.
Oh God! So I guess the same question, in the same vein. Why do you think religious trauma is so diagnosed sparingly? I would say, I mean, they don't seem to think it's a real thing. I mean, even the past couple of days, even on Twitter, you and I have been talking on Twitter, and there's been some going back and forth about people coming in and saying, "Oh no, this is religious trauma, it's bullshit," and blah blah blah. How come people don't seem to want to recognize it?
Well, it hasn't made its way into the DSM yet, so they have a category for religious issues. Right. And I do think the time is coming where religious trauma syndrome will be recognized. Pretty much it, if you look at CPTSD, complex PTSD, you're going to find religious trauma syndrome. Those two very much overlap. But again, I think people are resistant to it because you've heard of NIMBY, not in my backyard. Folks are like, well, not my religion, not my religion. And even when I talk to other therapists about it, because I want them to be educated so that they can better help their clients, they will often say, well, that's not my religion. My religion's only been great. My religion's only been wonderful. But if your worldview is based on a book that itself is problematic, then there's a problem there. You may not recognize that you could be passing judgment on your client without meaning to. Mm-hmm. So people need to become aware of their biases, especially where religion is involved.
So essentially you're saying if it was to go into DSM-6, for example, because we're now at DSM-5, basically people would basically say, religion can cause a trauma, and I think that's that threshold they're not willing to step into, because then it puts a spotlight on not just a faith, but all the faith.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and so I've heard from and interacted with people who've left all different religions and all different facets of Christianity. So not just former evangelicals, but former JWs and former Mormons. Those are two groups that really suffer tremendously when they leave because they're shunned by their families. So my parents didn't shun me. My father and I are now estranged. My mother and I remain close, but she can't really understand what I'm doing because she still delights in her faith. And I mean, she's in her 80s. It's not my job to try and talk anybody out of anything that brings them comfort. But she's trying to support me. She's so sweet. And she says, well, honey, should I buy a ticket to your conference to support you? And I said, absolutely not, Mom. I really think we can, let's just talk about something else. I don't want to rob her of the comfort that she is right now needing, because she is very close to the end of her life. Now, if she came to me and said, I'm questioning, I have questions about this, then we would totally have that conversation. But my place is not to be, telling others what to do. My place instead is, I'm kind of I'm under the church steps or whatever. So if you're thrown out of your church, or if you lose your faith and so you're leaving and you need a safety net, you need a soft place to land as you're trying to figure out all these changes in your mind and in your life, what's happening. That's what I'm there for, not to try and talk people out of their beliefs.
See, you under the church steps, like you said, and Brent is in the porn section of that bookstore. And, everybody's got their place.
It's a good section.
That's a good section. I'm not saying it's a bad section. It's a good section. So, Janice, what's the worst story you've ever heard about religious trauma, and maybe give us also the best story? Let's finish this on a nice positive note.
Well, certainly there are very unfortunate stories related to Christian fundamentalism in particular, where people have refused medical treatment for their child, and the child has died an agonizing death. I think in particular of parents who withhold insulin from their diabetic children, and that is a terrible, terrible way to go. So those will be some of the worst ones. And really, I think my story is the best regarding religious trauma because I got out.
Yes.
I saw that my thinking had been distorted. And I was able to research and educate and get myself out and start to rebuild healthy communities for myself apart from religion. And now I'm an example for other people that it's possible for them to build a rewarding and healthy secular life post-religion.
It shows that it's never too late, and there's always
hope. It's never too late.
And on top of that you're not alone. I think that's a very important thing, too. None of us are alone, although it feels like it at first.
Yes, that's a huge one because it really is a very big deal to lose your religious community. It's a huge deal. I mean, I was a part of the church pretty much from childhood or from infancy, and my friends were people in the church, and my beliefs were informed by going to church every Sunday, and it informed the way I dressed and the things I ate or watched or participated in. And so when you have the dissolution of your worldview like that, it's very traumatizing. And it was such a relief to stumble upon Dr. Winnell and find out that, because I didn't know anyone else who'd been as wholehearted about the faith as I was, and then who lost their faith. And I counted it a huge, huge loss. It was like a death. It was like a divorce. And that's why I call my workshop the Divorcing Religion Workshop, because that's how significant it is when you lose your faith.
Yeah. Although, personally, I'd never like to say I lost my faith. I gained reason. That's what I say. I didn't lose anything. I gained reason.
Yeah.
Well, whenever we have losses, there are also gains. Sometimes they're harder to see, or it takes us a while to get kind of past our pain in order to recognize some of those gains. But we must name our losses. They can't be mourned if they're not identified.
I love your story so much, because especially that moment where you talk about when you got that book, because I remember the feeling of that, the feeling of, should I step in here? And you're looking up at the sky, it's like, are the clouds forming?
Yep.
And am I sneak in real quick? And, is people watching? And it's so funny now, because now I've got people doing this when they're looking at me. I've got a friend of mine who stepped in the other day, says, I was about to walk into a church, and I wasn't sure if I was to go in, and there was a there was a political debate in the church. He says, then I saw Kevin walk in, and lightning didn't strike, so I just walked in too. So I'm glad that
there's something freeing about when you finally get to that point where you just go, you accept the fact that you could possibly be mistaken.
Yeah.
And it's because you wouldn't allow that before. Like, I wouldn't allow that when I was growing up, because I was like, there's no way that these people that I love this much lied to me.
Yes.
Yes. And it doesn't but the thing is, it doesn't have to be a lie. They could just be mistaken in telling you their mistaken, beliefs. And it's so, and that I thought was so freeing. And it's funny, because when I talk to them, they're like, "Oh, you're acting like you're so smart." And I'm like, I'm not smart. I don't think that I'm not. I know I'm not smart. I know that for a fact. But it's the fact that I just recognize that my thinking could be wrong. It's actually me recognizing that I'm not smart,
right,
and saying that maybe the way that I'm coming to these conclusions is wrong, and that was what kind of blew the whole lid off of everything.
Right.
You know what I mean?
And when our parents indoctrinate us, it is not because they're intentionally deceiving us. It is because they themselves were indoctrinated. And when we're a child and our caregiver tells us stories and says these stories are true, we have no choice but to ingest that as truth. And because we learned it from our caregiver at such a young age, it comes with all kinds of psychological booby traps there. So as we get older, it keeps us from questioning what they taught us, because as a child our life is dependent upon our caregivers and what they teach us, and we must please them.
Yeah, it's probably one
and
of
we
the...
love them too. They're people that we love and admire.
Love and trust.
It's probably one of the biggest tragedy of it all, because, you know, in reality, although there's a lot of harm that's being done, there's very few, quote, bad players in this game. You know, most people are just, you know, they're doing what they think is right.
Yeah.
There are, of course, some people some charlatans that'll take advantage of people. Yeah. Absolutely. But for the vast majority of people, believers and non-believers out there, they're good, genuine people. Wow.
That's very true, and they will not likely give up their belief system until some sort of tragedy besets them. That's often what it takes, because it's no longer that they hold their beliefs, as that their beliefs hold them very, very tightly. So it often takes a tragedy to shake people loose, as it did me.
Wow.
Yeah. It's funny because, like, the other day I was just listening to a thing, and it was like, you know, I had before listening to this, I had read a thing that was like basically saying about indoctrination and how indoctrination works, and like it can work in the childhood sense, but it also works in the sense that when people have gone through trauma in their lives and have like gone through something really hard, you know, that it's real easy to get that person to whatever you're trying to pull them towards, right? Because they're suffering and they're trying to figure out a way out of it. And so like, it was funny because I was listening to this sermon, because I just put on sermons just to listen to them, and kind of I know it's weird, but I break them down in my mind. I'm like, this is why they're wrong or whatever, you know. But I was listening to it, and it kind of hit me. They were just like, look. They went to the portion of the show or whatever where they were, or the sermon where they are inviting the people to become Christians and whatnot, and they're like, hey, whatever like hardship you're going through right now, you know, we have a solution. It's Jesus, you know, and that never really clicked for me, I guess, like until that moment just recently, where I was just like, oh man, that's why, you know, that's why they're doing that, because they know that people, that when they're going, I mean, and I don't even know if they're doing this knowingly, but when people are going through stuff like whatever it is, you know, it's real easy to go, here's a solution, you just need to trust God, you know. And it's funny because like that's the time when people are mostly willing to accept these great, like all of these conclusions that they're like, because it's not just one, it's not just that God exists, it's the donkeys talk, snakes talk, there was a flood, like there's like a million things you gotta like accept.
But the funny thing
proposition
on top of that, Brent, I think to agree with what you're saying, on top of that, what's funny about that is it also is a lazy choice, because to say just accept Jesus doesn't entail any work on your part. So, oh, okay. And it's just wishful thinking, and it's like I don't know, it appeals to the lazy nature of humans, I think. To say, okay, I'll just believe in Jesus and everything's going to magically disappear, instead of actually coming down and actually have to work on the issue.
Right.
Well, and so we've talked a lot about childhood indoctrination in this podcast, but frankly, anyone who's vulnerable, like anyone who's in a time of transition, and transition occurs throughout our life. You know, we even thinking of a senior who maybe loses their partner, maybe their partner dies. They are suddenly very vulnerable to a community that offers community. You know, we will love you, we will care for you, we will support you. So teenagers, adolescents, young adults, there's all these different transition points in life, and we are vulnerable at each one of those transition points. So those of us on the other side of it, and I'm an atheist, I count myself an atheist, it really behooves us to be very compassionate to people who have the courage to step out of and question their beliefs. And it takes time. People don't change overnight. It's a journey of walking away from those beliefs.
That is fantastic. Janice, thank you so much for being with us today. But the mic is all yours. Tell us about CORT. If people want to find out how to get to CORT, how to register, how to attend the conference, where can they reach you?
They can send me an email, CORT, that's C-O-R-T, CORTinformation @gmail.com. They can also follow me on Twitter at wise_counselor or at divorce religion. I have both of those accounts on Twitter. We will hopefully leave a link in the description for your podcast for people to sign up and register. And also, I want to extend a discount to any of your listeners if they use POD15, POD15, they can get a $15 American discount on registering, because
that's like $300
is in American prices, because it's mostly the American folks who will be attending. So, do yourself a favor and use that little discount there.
POD15, POD15 for the listeners of Left in the Valley. Fantastic. Janice, thank you so much for being on the show with us. But before I let you go, I should really have you say, "Hi, I'm Janice Selbie. I took and I gave a lot of therapy to the people of Left in the Valley." But I'll have you say instead, "Hi, this is Janice Selbie, and I took a left in the valley."
Hi, this is Janice Selbie, and I took a left at the valley.
Fantastic. And that was Janice Selbie. And she'll be conferencing and using the conference for CORT 2021 and coming to a screen near you. Fantastic. That was a great guest.
She was great.
I love her story.
We definitely need to have her come back.
Oh, absolutely. I love her story. I
say that every week.
I love how humane her story is.
Yeah.
And I'm still trying to picture the idea of her walking through basically a store trying to hide the book there.
Yes. Well, and I can just picture that curtain, like you said. You thought for sure she was going somewhere else. But, but I do know what they're talking about, having the cult stuff behind a curtain. I've seen that before in the smaller bookstores, of course.
I don't know. Maybe I'm just I'm dating myself here, because the first image that came through my mind is when you went to Blockbuster.
Of course, that's exactly what came into my mind.
There's a room in the back there that was just a porn section.
Yeah, we're definitely dating ourselves just a little bit.
That's when we met Brent, right?
Yeah, exactly. Cruising that back section.
Chilling.
Oh, you're quite a bit younger than us, aren't you, Brent?
I'm 36. So
not that much. So you were around in the Blockbuster days. You were just a little bit younger.
Oh yeah, I was young.
Yeah,
so I remember that. Yeah, absolutely. So I think my favorite though was the pantsuit shaming.
Oh yeah,
I know, right?
Loved to get a video of that.
Oh my god, that's amazing.
I didn't realize that the church I went to is so fundamentalist, but it truly is.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's actually kind of all the things she's talking about. The head coverings. I mean, we weren't Mennonite, of course, but. Yeah, it was.
Yeah, so CORT 2021. So look it up, guys. Like I said,
don't forget to use the discount.
POD15. POD15 will give you a $15 discount on that conference. It's totally going to be worth it. You should attend. Well, thank you so much to Janice Selbie for being our guest, and thank you to my co-hosts Sabrina and Brent for being on the show. You can find us at leftinthevalley.ca. You can also help us at patreon.com/LATV, like our patrons. Patreon sucks donkey balls and Rent the Reason podcast. You can help us grow the show. Give us a 5-star review wherever you find us. It helps us and it helps others find the show, more importantly. And you can find us also on Facebook and on Twitter at LATV Podcast. Am I missing anything? Or you can send us an email, leftinthevalley@outlook.com.
Yeah.
Perfect. Coming up.
We're everywhere.
Next week, we'll have Brad Dirks.
I'm so excited about
Father
this
of
one.
a transgendered boy. So it's going to be interesting to listen to his story and what he's done and what happened to him. We'll also have Neil, the 604 atheist.
I'm excited for that one, too.
We'll have constitutional professor Joel Backen to talk about the Corporation 2.
Ooh, I'm so excited.
That's going to be great. And we'll also have a friend of mine called Adam. He'll be dispelling myth about bodybuilding and health and fitness. So that's going to be all fun and dandy as well.
Wow.
Brent,
got some great lineup.
You want to do a little plug for your show there, my friend? What was going on there?
Oh yeah, If you
Since we were kind of talking about
definitely check out the episode of the Happy Debating Atheist where is the most recent one, like right now, that we were all there together.
Yeah,
and we were able to talk to Dallas there about right versus left, and y'all did a great job.
No, let's face said, we destroyed him.
Yeah,
Let's face
and
it.
we need to do it again soon. So make sure, go check out the first one. We'll have the second one there soon enough.
I'd like to get him on the right to reason. That's going to be my next goal.
That should be interesting.
He's a nice guy. Don't get me wrong.
Do you think we can
he disagreed with us, but he was nice about it.
Do you think we can, get him to turn his mind and find the right way of doing things?
Anyway, that's for a future episode. Thank you so much, guys. Until next time.
Wow, you guys have a lot of fun on this podcast.
Oh, yeah,
we
probably.
do.
We have to, because otherwise our lives are depressing.
Gotta have fun somehow.
Scot free, and the Pope does his very best to keep it on the hush. Don't wanna affect business, he loves money too much. We know that they love the kids, but how the fuck can we protect them while they planning to molest them? We teaching them to respect them.
Fuck that.
The system is broke down, working backwards, and the only action or tactic I plan to practice now is to attack them. The parties of God's hands are bloodstained, millions of murders by believers, and they're all in God's name. And let me take a sec, don't mean to sound so hateful, but I swear to God, pun intended, I find it disgraceful that many atheists are told to be quiet. You're not alone, speak your mind, time to let it be known. I'm proud to be an atheist, a skeptic, a non-believer, an infidel, a heathen, I call it how I see it. I say it's ignorance and you just call it faith, and unsubstantiated claims, that's something to be ashamed. I'm an atheist. I'm an atheist. I'm an atheist. I'm an atheist.